Yeah, the Dolphins taking care of a lot of business today, including releasing Tyreek Hill, veteran wide receiver who missed most of last season with a significant knee injury.
It is officially over. Here is the inside scoop on how Miami axed their franchise icon. Let me set the stage for you, because this story is straight up bananas. Trace the breadcrumbs back to this specific moment, February 16th, 2026, President's Day. You know, when folks are usually chilling on the couch, Miami decided to wake up and drop a nuke that rattled the entire league. They formally cut Tyreek Hill loose, the same guy they mortgaged their future for, the guy they swapped a first-rounder to get, then backed up the Brinks truck with a $120 million deal just to keep him in the 305. Poof. History. Zero heads up. No tearful presser. No victory lap. Just a cold paperwork filing on a Monday off. Make no mistake, this was not some minor roster tweak slipping through the news cycle while you were grilling. This was a scorched earth rebuild. A total purge that reminds you this game is savage business at the end of the day. Hill was not the only big name packing his bags that afternoon. They also waved goodbye to pass rusher Bradley Chubb, lineman James Daniels, and receiver Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. The press is calling it a monumental fire sale.
Dolphins taking care of a lot of business today, including releasing Tyreek Hill, veteran wide receiver who missed most of last season with a significant knee injury.
Cash, durability, and a fresh regime that is allergic to the old Miami playbook. Let's start with the financials, because the figures are jaw-dropping. You almost have to squint to believe them. Hill was slated to count a massive $51.1 million against the cap for the 2026 season. Let that marinate for a second. $51 million. For one guy, on a team already swimming in debt. Here is the wild part. None of that cash was locked in going into the break. He was set to make about $36 million in salary and bonuses. Honestly, the writing was on the wall.
Tyreek Hill was due around $36 million in salary and bonuses this season, so this was always a likely outcome.
Come March 14th, the third day of the league year, $11 million of that paycheck would have become guaranteed.
$16 million of that would have become guaranteed if he was still on the roster on March 14th, so the Dolphins getting ahead of that.
So Miami was looking at a $16 million bill coming due in just a few weeks. By cutting bait now, the franchise clears roughly $23 million in breathing room. They swallowed about $28 million in dead cap. Does it sting? You bet. But it is mandatory when your team starts the offseason. $17.4 million in the hole over the projected $33 million cap limit.
They'll take some dead money, about $28 million for Tyreek Hill, but they're obviously moving on. New GM, new head coach.
This is not the same front office that made the blockbuster trade for Hill back in March 2022, not by a long shot. GM Chris Grier got the boot mid-season in October 2025. After the team flopped again, Coach Mike McDaniel was walked out of the building shortly after that. To fill the void, Miami hired John Eric Sullivan as GM on January 9th. Then they tapped Jeff Hafley as head coach on January 19th. Both guys hail from Green Bay, where the philosophy is pretty simple. Do not pay aging stars $50 million a year. Sullivan laid his cards on the table during his first presser. He preached patience in free agency and building a foundation through the draft. He emphasized a locker room culture where everyone is 100% all in.
It just reminds me that the NFL is actually a business and it's about your production. What have you done for me lately? Well, lately, last year, Tyreek Hill was injured for majority of the season.
Frankly, the signs were there for weeks, maybe months if you knew where to look. Whispers were already circulating way back in late January that Hill was almost certainly getting the axe. Insiders pegged the massive contract structure and that gruesome injury as the final nails in the coffin. Honestly, nobody keeping a close watch on the drama in South Florida was caught off guard by this. The financial fallout from those 4 President's Day cuts was nothing short of astronomical. Miami scrubbed over $56 million of dead weight, flipping the franchise from deep debt to a cool $13 million in cap space. That is the kind of massive cash flow that finally lets a new front office breathe. It gives them the freedom to construct the squad their way, brick by brick, with hungry young talent.
They're obviously moving on, new GM, new head coach, a new era there in Miami.
Whole lot going on with the Dolphins on this Monday.
Yet, you cannot ignore the man in the middle of it all. or the catastrophic injury that made cutting ties a no-brainer for the team. This is where the narrative takes a grim, heartbreaking detour, the hit that flipped the script and the brutal, uphill climb back to the top. To really understand why Tyreek Hill is staring down free agency for the first time ever, we have to dial it back to the night of September 29th, 2025. It was Monday Night Football, the exact kind of primetime stage where the cheetah usually feasts. The Finns were defending their turf at Hard Rock Stadium against the New York Jets.
Last season, Hill suffered a dislocated knee and torn ACL in Week 4 against the Jets.
Here is how it went down in the third quarter with just under 13 minutes ticking off the clock. Hill snagged a quick hitter from Tua Tagovailoa, burst for 10 yards, and was headed for the boundary when rookie defensive back Malachi Moore closed in. The tackle was not anything special, no headhunting, no cheap shots, just a standard play you see 50 times a Sunday. But the way Hill's left leg crumpled and twisted beneath him as he tumbled out of bounds, that moment altered history. Medical staff swarmed the field instantly, popping his cleat off to stabilize the joint. They carted him off the turf and rushed him straight to a local ER for emergency scans. The verdict was a nightmare scenario for a guy who lives and dies by his speed. A fully dislocated left knee with multiple torn ligaments, including the ACL, not just one tear, a total mess. We are talking about a career ender for someone whose entire game relies on blazing a 4.2940. He went under the knife the very next day, September 30th. And the silver lining was that the operation was deemed a success. Drew Rosenhaus, his agent, told the press that the torn ligaments actually snapped back into place naturally. No severed nerves, no blood flow issues, no fractures, and the cartilage held up. That is a massive bullet dodged, considering knee dislocations often come with limb-threatening vascular complications. Escaping those horror stories gave everyone at least a sliver of hope for the future. But hope and biological reality are often at war, especially when you are dealing with trauma this severe at the elite pro level. Just fixing an ACL typically sidelines a guy for 9 to 12 months. Throw in the collateral damage, plus Hill's admission in February 2026 that he still needs another surgery on his LCL. Now you are looking at a grueling 12 to 18-month exile, according to top-tier ortho specialists who handle these complex wrecks.
It's still unclear whether he will actually be ready to play the start of the 2026 season as he still recovers from that major knee surgery.
Former NFL team doctor David Chow painted an even bleaker picture. He labeled it a career-threatening blow for an athlete whose entire paycheck depends on being the fastest man alive. Chow predicts a comeback in late 2026, or maybe even 2027, which is way less sunny than the agent's spin. You have to stack this up against other gruesome knee injuries in league history, just to grasp the absolute mountain Hill has to climb here. The closest parallel is Alex Smith, whose leg snapped in that horrific spiral fracture back in November 2018. Though Smith's was technically worse. He endured 17 surgeries, fought off flesh-eating bacteria, and nearly lost the leg entirely. It took him 23 agonizing months to suit up again. He lasted 8 games, and then hung up the cleats for good. Look, Hill isn't facing the nightmare scenario Alex Smith endured. We aren't talking about shattered bones, infections, or saving a limb here. Yet, these two athletes share a haunting uncertainty that keeps players awake at night after a major injury. The burning question is whether you can ever truly regain your elite form once your leg has been surgically reconstructed. For a pocket passer like Smith, you can survive and compete without top-tier mobility. But for Tyreek Hill, his entire Hall of Fame identity is built on superhuman velocity. That makes his comeback infinitely more complex. And honestly, the jury is still out. By mid-February 2026, barely 4.5 months post-op, Hill had already ditched the leg brace and was staying upbeat. He hopped on a Twitch stream on the 17th to reassure fans, claiming recovery is smooth while keeping his mind right by DJing and jet-setting. Now, the million-dollar question regarding his age and health remains. Can he reclaim the crown as the league's most dominant wideout? His agent, Drew Rosenhaus, is circling Week 1 of the 2026 season on the calendar as the target. However, most experts are pumping the brakes. predicting a stint on the physically unable to perform list is the more likely scenario, which would sideline him for the first 6 weeks, buying time for rehab without burning an active roster spot. This brings up a fascinating debate regarding his production in South Beach. Even before the injury struck, the trend lines were arguably pointing downward. During his initial 2-year run with the Dolphins, the man was absolutely unstoppable. He racked up 119 catches for over 1,700 yards in 2022, then did it again in 2023 with nearly 1,800 yards, earning back-to-back All-Pro nods as the game's premier weapon. But 2024 painted a different picture, with production dipping to 82 grabs and just over 1,000 yards. That statistical slide knocked him out of the top 20 rankings for both receptions and yardage. So, you have a speedster who was already slowing down on the stat sheet, suddenly hit with a career-altering knee injury, all while staring down his 32nd birthday in just a few weeks. When you stack those cards, the Dolphins' decision to cut bait makes cold, hard financial sense. But realizing the business logic doesn't make Tyreek's reaction any less electrifying. What followed absolutely broke the internet, the Cheetah's clapback and the frenzy of teams wanting in. Mere hours after Miami made the release official, Hill took to Instagram and dropped one of the rawest, most heartfelt goodbyes we have seen in sports media in a long time, posting under his verified handle. He opened with the phrase, "The journey don't stop," before showering love on the organization, the locker room, the staff, and the Miami faithful for an unforgettable 4-year run. But it was the back half of that post that really caught fire and had everyone sharing it across their timelines. Hill reflected on this chapter, teaching him true leadership, grit, and gratitude. Then he dropped the line that sent shockwaves through the NFL. He declared that for the first time, the Cheetah is fully locked in and absolutely refuses to slow down. He signed off with a vow that sounded like a warning shot to the league. The Cheetah will return. Born again. That post instantly exploded, gathering over 38,000 likes and hundreds of comments debating his next landing spot. That is where the plot thickens, because plenty of franchises would kill to add a weapon of his caliber, assuming they believe he can get healthy and look anything like his old self. The obvious frontrunner on everyone's lips is the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, Kansas City is already getting the band back together by rehiring offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. So why not explore a reunion with the wide receiver who helped deliver them a Lombardi trophy? They traded him in March 2022, and despite winning another ring, that offense arguably hasn't possessed the same terrifying vertical threat since he left. Barely hours after the news broke, Chiefs star Chris Jones poured gasoline on the fire with a 2-word tweet that had social media losing its mind. "It's time." Essentially, a public recruiting pitch, right there on Main for the world to see. Vegas odds even spiked to 52%, favoring a Kansas City return. But hold your horses. Not everyone is convinced a homecoming is the slam dunk it seems to be. There are valid concerns about whether this move fits for either party, considering the Tyreek coming back is a different animal than the one who left. Let's be real, the man doesn't hold the same cards he used to. And that's a massive detail everyone is ignoring while they fantasize about a reunion. Hill packed his bags for Miami because he craved that spotlight he needed to be the main attraction. The frontman, not just another face in the crowd. Returning now, he's 32 with a wrecked knee. He'd have to swallow his pride and take a backseat role, miles away from the stardom he left. Bottom line, if he returns to Arrowhead, he's got to make peace with being a supporting actor instead of the superstar carrying the show. Once you peel back the layers, plenty of pundits are actually cooling on the whole homecoming narrative. Robert Turbin, the ex-running back now talking shop on CBS Sports HQ, didn't mince words when the Chiefs' topic came up. Sure, the X's and O's make sense, but for Kansas City, it feels like retreading old tires. Been there, conquered that, bought the t-shirt. Veteran voice Charles Davis doubled down on that vibe, dropping a cinematic metaphor that hit the nail right on the head. Think about the blockbusters we love. How often does Part 2 actually live up to the hype? Finding a Godfather Part 2 that matches the original is a unicorn event. And frankly, that's a perspective we need to take seriously. Magic rarely strikes twice. So if the Chiefs' reunion is a bust, where does the speedster actually land? The rumor mill is spinning out of control with theories from insiders, experts, and the Twitterverse. Buffalo looks like a prime candidate. The defending AFC Kings could pair Josh Allen with that electric speed to send their offense into the stratosphere. Baltimore is a fascinating wildcard snagging. Hill might be the exact leverage they need to get Lamar Jackson to ink that massive extension. It feels like a repeat of the Odell Beckham Jr. playbook from 2023. They bank heavily on their locker room chemistry. They trust their system explicitly. But then you've got to look at the Los Angeles Chargers. This might be the juiciest scenario on the board. Take a look at who just grabbed the headset as their offensive coordinator. Mike McDaniel, the very architect who spent 3 years constructing Miami's entire attack around Hill's blistering pace. Hollywood writers couldn't script it better. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh is desperate for a threat to line up opposite D.K. Metcalf. Don't sleep on San Francisco, where a legitimate alpha receiver could finally push Brock Purdy into the elite conversation. In Chicago, linking Hill up with the young gun, Caleb Williams creates a dynamic that hits the gas on their rebuilding plans. Even Cleveland is floating around as a dark horse. If they land Shedeur Sanders as their future signal caller, things get interesting. A rookie quarterback needs a deep threat like oxygen, and Hill provides that safety net for a franchise still searching for its identity. When your on-field product has been lackluster, bringing in a weapon like Tyreek instantly changes the calculus. No matter whose jersey he wears, the word on the street is clear. Don't expect a long-term commitment on paper. We're looking at a prove-it deal maybe 1 or 2 years, laden with performance bonuses, likely sitting between $10 and $15 million a season. That's a massive pay cut compared to the $120 million bag he secured down in Miami. But that's the cold hard truth when you're 32 and rehabbing a knee that had multiple ligaments shredded. Add in the well-known off-field drama, and front offices are definitely calculating those risks in their private war rooms. Yet, everyone writing his obituary seems to suffer from amnesia regarding who Tyreek Hill actually is. The guy has racked up 819 catches, over 11,363 yards, and found the end zone 83 times. 8 Pro Bowls, 5 All-Pro nods, and a ring even if he returns at 70% capacity. That's elite pedigree. Most experts agree a diminished Tyreek Hill still outclasses the top receiver on half the rosters in this league. He's the kind of X factor that drags a playoff hopeful across the finish line in 2026. I'm betting the market heats up fast. A healthy Tyreek is a cheat code that plenty of desperate GMs will pay to acquire. The cheetah claims he's dialed in, focused, and feeling like a brand new man. Now the whole league holds its breath to see if it's just bluster, or if he's got one final electric run left in the tank. It's the latest twist in a Hall of Fame resume. When free agency kicks off on March 11th, rest assured, agents' phones will be melting down for the fastest player in NFL history. So, where do you see him landing? KC, Buffalo, L.A., or a total surprise? Smash one of those cards on your screen for more breakdowns like this one.